For more than a decade, consumer technology has revolved around a single object, the smartphone. Everything important was pulled into it. Communication, entertainment, navigation, work, health tracking, payments, identity verification. The phone didn't just become a device. It became the interface for modern life itself. And for a long time, that model worked extraordinarily well. But success has a cost. The smartphone is no longer a growth engine in the way it once was. Hardware improvements are incremental. Upgrade cycles have stretched. Users are more dependent on their phones than ever, yet increasingly dissatisfied with the experience of using them. Engagement remains high, but enthusiasm does not. This tension is now shaping how new products are being designed. One of the clearest trends emerging from recent industry coverage, including CES reporting, is that tech companies are quietly pivoting away from screen-centric experiences. Not by eliminating phones, but by reducing how often users need to look at them at all. That shift is subtle, but it represents a major change in design philosophy. For years, success in consumer tech meant capturing attention, more screen time, more notifications, more engagement metrics. The smartphone was the perfect vehicle for that approach, but attention is not infinite, and the industry is now running into the limits of that model. People are burned out. The phone is the first thing many users see in the morning and the last thing they see at night. It interrupts work, sleep, conversations, and downtime. It collapses boundaries between professional life and personal life. And while users rely on it constantly, they increasingly recognize that it is also a source of distraction, stress, and fatigue. The industry's response is not to ask users to simply use their phones less. That would be unrealistic. Instead, companies are attempting something more structural, designing technology that shifts interaction away from the phone screen itself. What this means in practice is intelligence moving outward, into accessories, wearables, ambient devices, and secondary interfaces that operate alongside the phone rather than through it. The phone still exists, it still matters, but it is no longer expected to be the place where every interaction happens. This is not a wellness trend or a lifestyle movement. It is a recognition that the smartphone as a primary interface is reaching a saturation point. One reason this trend is accelerating is artificial intelligence. AI is often marketed as a way to make devices more powerful, but its deeper value is reducing friction. When implemented well, AI should make technology less demanding, not more. And yet, many current AI implementations do the opposite, adding new apps, new prompts, and new interfaces that require even more attention. That contradiction is becoming increasingly obvious. If an AI assistant requires you to open an app, type a prompt, evaluate a response, and then manually act on it, the efficiency gains are limited. In some cases, it simply adds another layer of cognitive overhead. The industry seems to be recognizing this problem. Instead of treating AI as a feature that lives inside a screen, more companies are exploring ways to embed intelligence into the environment itself. Devices that listen passively, interfaces that respond through audio or subtle visual cues, accessories that perform tasks without demanding active engagement. This approach reframes what smart technology is supposed to do. Rather than pulling users deeper into digital spaces, these systems aim to operate quietly in the background. They surface information when necessary, then disappear again. The goal is not engagement, but usefulness. This is a fundamental shift in priorities. It also explains why so many of the products highlighted in CES coverage were not phones, tablets, or laptops, but accessories and secondary devices designed to work with existing ecosystems. Messaging tools that limit distraction instead of amplifying it. Bedside devices meant to keep phones physically out of reach at night. Wearables that focus on passive tracking rather than constant alerts. audio-first interfaces that reduce the need to look at a screen. None of these replace the smartphone, but all of them reduce how central it needs to be. In effect, the phone becomes infrastructure rather than interface. It provides connectivity, compute power, security, and coordination. But interaction itself happens elsewhere. Through voice, through touch, through ambient displays, through devices that fade into the background when they are not needed. This is where the implications for Apple become particularly important. Apple has built one of the most tightly integrated ecosystems in consumer technology. The iPhone sits at the center, supported by the Apple Watch, AirPods, Macs, and a vast accessory market. That ecosystem is already well positioned for a post-screen shift, but Apple has not yet defined what the next dominant interface will be. Historically, Apple does not rush to be first. It waits for technologies to mature, then commits once it believes an interaction model is stable enough to scale. This strategy worked with multi-touch interfaces, app ecosystems, and wearables. The challenge now is that the next phase of computing is not centered on a single obvious interface. There is no clear successor to the smartphone screen, in the way the touchscreen replaced physical keyboards. Instead, the industry is experimenting with many partial solutions, none of which have yet converged into a standard. That uncertainty helps explain Apple's apparent caution. Shipping advanced AI capabilities without a clear interaction model risks locking the company into the wrong paradigm. The history of voice assistants is a cautionary tale here. Early assistants promised hands-free computing, but failed to deliver consistent, reliable utility. They were impressive in demos and frustrating in daily use. The lesson is that intelligence alone is not enough. The interface matters just as much. AI that requires constant attention, correction, and supervision does not reduce friction, it increases it. And in a world where users are already overloaded, that is a losing proposition. The trend towards screen-reducing technology suggests that the industry is searching for a different answer, one where intelligence becomes ambient rather than interactive by default. Ambient intelligence does not demand engagement. It listens selectively, it acts quietly, it intervenes only when context suggests it should. This is a much harder problem to solve than building a chatbot. It requires understanding user intent without explicit prompts. It requires respecting boundaries. It requires systems that know when not to act as much as when to act. But if it can be solved, it changes the relationship between users and technology entirely. Instead of being pulled into devices, users remain in the real world while technology supports them from the periphery. The phone becomes a control center rather than a constant presence. This is the direction many of the CES-derived trends point toward, even if the individual products themselves are still rough or incomplete. It also reframes how AI fits into consumer technology. Rather than being a feature users actively engage with, AI becomes a layer that enhances everything else. Invisible most of the time, noticeable only when it fails or when it provides meaningful value. From this perspective, the smartphone is not going away, but its role is changing. The screen is no longer the default interface for every task. It is one interface among many, and often it is not the best one. For Apple, this transition presents both an opportunity and a risk. If Apple defines the post-screen interaction model, integrating ambient intelligence across its ecosystem in a way that feels coherent and trustworthy, it can extend its dominance into the next decade of computing. If it misreads the shift, intelligence becomes commoditized, interfaces fragment, and platform advantages weaken. CES coverage does not tell us exactly what the winning model will be, but it does make one thing clear. The industry has accepted that the smartphone-first era is no longer sufficient. Designing technology that reduces screen dependence is no longer a niche idea. It is becoming a strategic priority. Phones remain essential, but they are no longer expected to do everything. The next phase of consumer technology is not about more engagement, more notifications, or more screen time. It is about intelligence that integrates into life without dominating it. That is the problem the industry is now trying to solve. And whichever company solves it first will define what personal computing looks like after the smartphone.